the Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, give a 5-star rating, and leave a review. Check out all our past episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you pod. What if these celebrities weren't famous? What would they have become? What was their first job? We're about to find out.
So if you have any preconceived notions on professional wrestling, hey brother, say your prayers, eat your vitamins, let those end right here. You're about to hear something extremely unexpected. Austin Watson performing on the WWE's Raw brand as a part of The New Day, along with Big E and Kofi Kingston. You know Austin by his professional name, WWE superstar Xavier Woods, our guest this week on Celebrity Jobber. How are you, man?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's funny, because let's just get it out in the open. I think a lot of professional wrestlers don't usually follow the path that you followed into the sport. Would you agree?
No, I think that in this generation that we currently are in, I think that there's a lot of people that are taking their own route that is essentially a different route from what some of the people in the previous generation did. And we're able to do that because we learned from them. They told us what it was like. They explained what that process is like, eventually closing a chapter, or whether you just want to make sure that you're doing everything that you can with your creativity and being your full self. So I think that a lot of talented people in our generation currently are taking the reins on that and doing a lot more than simply being or being professional wrestlers. They're doing everything that they can do with what sports entertainment has given them. So
let me ask you a few questions about your upbringing. I know you're born and raised in Columbus, Georgia. Can you tell me at all about your family, your mom, your dad, their business, what they did for work?
Yeah, so my dad was in the military. He was a paratrooper and was doing things to protect himself, his family, and his country.
Wow.
And then my mom worked for the IRS, which my dad eventually did as well. And so I was born in Columbus, but then fairly quickly moved to Inglewood, California, so completely across the country. And then right before I turned 8, we moved to Georgia, and we've been here ever since.
Okay, so you've been there for most of your growing up, you would say, in Georgia?
Yeah, from 8 until college, and I went to college in South Carolina. So very much a Southern boy who missed the accent window. I don't have a Southern accent so much of the time.
No, you do not, because I travel quite a bit between Florida and Alabama, and I've stopped in Columbus, Georgia quite a bit, and I can tell you right now, you do not sound like the majority of folks that are from Columbus, Georgia. So the accent avoided you. But Xavier, you are a very intelligent man, because I obviously his degrees will prove that. But what's funny to me is that Xavier graduated from Furman University with a master's degree in psychology and a bachelor's degree in philosophy. So when you're in college, man, what did you think you wanted to be when you graduated?
So when I was in college, so I'll just do a quick thing. So from Furman, I got the undergrad in psychology and philosophy, and then got the master's from an institution called Walden University while still wrestling. But I always knew that I wanted to be a professional wrestler. I knew I wanted to be a WWE superstar more than anything. But I also knew that I had this passion for psychology, and my parents instilled into me, having a plan B doesn't mean that you don't believe in your plan A.
Right.
It's making sure that you have something for when plan A is finished. And becoming a WWE superstar is not easy at all. It is one of the most difficult feats to achieve on this planet as far as jobs go. But I knew I had to have it. But at the same time, I wasn't going to completely shun this other desire that I had in my life. I sat down and talked to my parents, and they said, well, if you want to do it, then do it. because the only thing that's stopping you from living those dreams is you and your decisions.
So tell me about the backup plan. Because there's, only a few jobs, I would say, that, you can move into, with a psychology major. So were you interested in speaking to people about their problems? What was it that you were, trying to focus in on plan B?
So with psychology, I knew I wanted to work in child psychology, so looking to be maybe like a school counselor or something along those lines. But while I was going through the programs, I found myself in a children's autism psychology course, and then everything kind of changed for me, and my focus became children's autism. And at the time, there's a lot more knowledge on the topic now, obviously, 20 years later. But that was what I fell in love with, because there were so many things that focused on, yes, helping the child who's dealing with this issue, but not a lot of resources for the families that are trying to mentally deal with it as well. The older sibling who's typically developing that doesn't understand why their younger sibling is getting so much more attention, because they're just not mentally there yet to be able to understand that. So all they feel is undesired, the issues that might happen between the two parental units in the house because of the schedules that you have to keep, because the stress that you go through. And not a lot of people were talking about that. So I wanted to kind of be the person who comes in and talks to the family about what they're going through and try to help people become the best versions of themselves that they can be, so that this child who's dealing with autism has the best people around them to help them get through this.
I mean, I think it's incredibly admirable and incredibly interesting as well. Tell me a little bit about your love of professional wrestling. Maybe is there a certain superstar, past or present, who you really idolized and looked up to, maybe wanted to follow them into this world that you're in now?
Well, there definitely 100% was. There was a guy by the name of Too Cold Scorpio, and he was the freaking man. He still is. And I loved watching him wrestle. And when I saw him, I knew I had to do this, and I had to do it in my own way. I had to figure out how to be some sort of ridiculous character and go out there and still just have these crazy, awesome matches. And so he was a huge inspiration for me and why I wanted to do this. And luckily, it's worked out for me. I've been with WWE since 2010 and been able to go to multiple different countries, travel all around the world, meet so many awesome people that I have no clue if I would have met otherwise. And I just had a lot of great life experiences by being able to have this life.
So you got into professional wrestling. I know where you grew up in Columbus, Georgia, and I know in the South there is a huge wrestling culture. So you can go to the armories and watch local, and the South professional wrestling has a circuit, a territory, if you will. But tell me, did you got your love from those local shows, and then what did you ended up finding a spot at a wrestling school?
So I actually didn't really know anything about the local shows as I was growing up. I just watched WWE and WCW,
okay,
and then ECW as well. And so it wasn't until I was in maybe high school that I really found out about what we call the independent scene, and that's what these local shows are. So I would go to one that was around my area once a month, my senior year of high school, and I would be so hyped and bring weapons and all this stuff. And so maybe after 8 or 10 months, one of the guys in charge, he was like, "Hey, so you really want to do this, don't you?" I said, "Yes, more than anything." He goes, "Well, I'm starting school in a few months, and here's my card, and you give me a call if you want to come by." And once he opened up, I graduated around the same time from high school. I started training immediately, and then did it throughout college. And I've been very lucky to land where I've landed, but it's because I've had a bunch of great people around me who took the time to teach me things the right way.
Can you tell me, is there a specific moment, a big break, if you will? Were they a series of things that happened? But can you think in your mind, man, I remember if this thing didn't happen, I mean, that was my big break. That got me catapulted, into superstardom, or where you are today?
Yeah, definitely. So I was in college. I was a senior, and my goal was to try to get a contract from a major wrestling organization before I graduated. And I ended up getting a shot to be on a very big show because of a guy by the name of AJ Styles.
Oh, yeah.
He vouched for me, and I was in this match, sight unseen, And they just let me wrestle on TV on like the largest show of the year for them. And I was in the first match against AJ and his tag team partner, and I was on a team with R-Truth. And after that, I ended up getting a contract, and so I hit my goal. I was a contracted TV wrestler.
Wow.
Before I graduated college, and it's because AJ took a shot and took a chance with me.
And tell me about your relationship with AJ Styles. Did you kind of meet him at a school, or how did he give you the shot?
So one of my very good friends, Sal Renaro, he hit me up and he said, hey, AJ's been in a tag team for a minute. He's about to go back to singles, and he just wants to, get in ring shape again for that. And so he's like, do you want to come and train with us? And it was about an hour and a half, 2 hours from where I was. I said, of course. And I asked my boss, who I worked at a daycare at the time, and she was actually my teacher at the daycare when I was little, and I went there. So she knew how much I wanted to be a wrestler. She gave me the week off work, and I went up there every day, and we worked out for, 4 or 5 hours each day. And after that, we had each other's phone numbers, and he called me up. He said, hey, are you busy this weekend? I said, no. And then he got me on this show, and we went from there.
Man.
So it's nothing but love to AJ.
That's awesome. You continue to surprise me, Xavier. You worked at a daycare. Was that your first job?
Yeah, that's pretty much my only job besides wrestling. So I knew that I wanted to, like I said, work with kids in psychology. So I was like, yeah, I'd love to work in this daycare. So I worked there throughout all my college career. I would work at the one in South Carolina when I was in college. And then when I come home to Georgia for the summer, I would transfer my stuff and work at the one in Georgia. Love all those women who worked there. They were incredible. The kids were awesome. But again, it's a place where really stressful at times because it's a bunch of little kids, but it's a place where you have a story at the end of every day. Something hilarious has happened, and these kids have made you laugh, made you cry, and it's been eventful. So I loved it.
Earlier in your wrestling career, you had a gimmick kind of based on the Rocky movie and character Apollo Creed. You were Austin Creed, Consequences Creed, Rashid Lucius Creed. I happen to be a humongous fan of Rocky, and were you as well?
Huge. Apollo Creed is the greatest character of anything ever made.
I couldn't agree more.
It's funny, we were talking about the Rocky movies a few months ago in the locker room, and some of the talent on the roster is younger, and they just haven't seen the Rocky movies, which blows my mind. And we're explaining to them, like, no, there have been nights where I'll start watching Rocky 1, and then I realize I'm watching the credits for Rocky 4, and now I'm getting up to go work out because you can't not feel that when you watch Rocky movies. You're just inspired to get up and do something.
I think I'm 48 years old now. I've been watching Rocky movies since they've been out, and I remember when the V8. You're too old for this, Xavier, but I'm sorry, you're too young for this. But back in the good old days when VHS tapes came out, there wasn't a store. There was a guy in a van that would pull up to your house and basically tell you the new movies. And the Rocky movie was at my house for about 2 weeks, and I watched it every day, multiple times a day. And to this day, when the very end of that movie comes on, and I'm getting emotional talking about it right now. At the very end, when they announced that Creed it still wins by a split decision, I tear up. I think it's probably one of the greatest pieces of sports cinema of all time, because Rocky loses. He lost. And it's just so powerful because his goal was to just go the distance, and he did it.
Yeah, it really sets the tone for what a win is, I think, in a lot of people's minds. If you're just kind of watching, you're like, oh, he lost, that sucks, whatever. But if you're actually sitting and trying to understand it, Rocky won that fight.
Absolutely.
It wasn't about what the official sheet said, because even when he quote unquote lost, he's just screaming for Adrian, like, I did it. Nobody thought that I could go the distance. They thought I was going to get knocked out. They thought I was a joke. And I proved myself wrong because I let them get in my head.
Man.
And I fought through that. Like that, Rocky it's strong, man. And then once you get to the second one and you really dig into him versus Creed in that movie, oh, come on, man.
Tell you what, I agree. I agree, man. I'd love to sit down and watch a Rocky marathon with you one day. I think we'd have a good time.
I love that. Get 5, though.
Yeah. That was a mistake. Even Sly says 5 was a mistake. But look, man, you're great. So interested in your story. It's you've been great. I wish you all the best with New Day. I wish you all the best wherever the WWE takes you. I have a feeling it's going to be a long, long way. You've got a backup plan when wrestling's over. I'm not worried about you. Dude, I got to tell you, it's been great talking to you, man. You're a really cool dude. I wish you all the best.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, man.
Seems like good parents. Dad was in the military. Mom worked with the IRS. Then Dad joined Mom with the IRS. Didn't discourage Austin from his dream of becoming a professional wrestler. Have a backup plan. That's all. I think that's a really important message. Trying to become a professional athlete, extremely, extremely difficult. But you know what? Go for it. Just have a backup plan. His backup plan was to work with kids. Graduated from Furman with a degree in psychology and his master's in philosophy. Said he wanted to work with autistic kids. His first job was at a daycare. Do you see this guy beating the shit out of people on Monday Night Raw each and every week with the WWE? That's not the real guy. That's Xavier Woods, WWE superstar. Austin Watson, pretty different guy. And his big break came from another wrestling superstar by the name of AJ Styles. Xavier and AJ kind of came up through the ranks of professional wrestling, and it seemed like AJ Styles started to become a big deal himself with TNA wrestling, and it seemed like that relationship kind of carried over when he needed somebody to wrestle against, and it was going to be a TV match. He called his pal Xavier Woods, got a deal to wrestle on TV for a match, and after that match, signed his first contract, and he considers that his big break. And his first and only job working at a daycare. Not what I expected. And that's probably the biggest reason why I love doing this podcast. If you like what you heard, I'd appreciate a 5-star rating. Of course, if you could leave a review. Stream us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you pod. And check out past episodes up on CelebrityJobber.com and follow us on Instagram, the Celebrity Jobber Podcast. That'll do it for another episode. Again, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. I'm Jeff Zito.